Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of council. It being 7:01, we'll call the meeting to order. Council, we have the land acknowledgement printed in our agenda and okay, so it's, okay, folks, we had a slight technical glitch, but we'll continue. Council, so we have the agenda in front of us. Any amendments? Any? Okay, motion to adopt. Seconded. All in favor? Adopted without, sorry, I should recognize Councillor Rowe is online with us. Everyone else is present. I believe Mr. Yates and Mr. Allen are both away today. All right, with that, we go to item 5.1, which is the DVP for 4686 Sunshine Coast Highway. Council, this is back to us with staff's recommendation to approve the DVP is on page 3 of our agenda. So, your hands. Councillor Bell.
Let's see. I want to just say publicly that I find these types of variance requests very difficult because generally speaking, there's a lot of stress for all parties involved. A homeowner, residents within the neighborhood or others, the impact can be significant. And this has been evident in this situation by the letters we've received from the neighbors. And because of this, I will be taking more time to speak to this. I believe that although there was a mistake made throughout the building process in the height guidelines, I believe this was a mistake and not deliberate. Saying this, there has also been a great deal of consultation from the time this variance was submitted between the District of Sechelt staff, owners, and the community, and this error was not taken lightly. Going forward, I also know by reading the staff report in front of me that this incident has brought about changes that will assist our planning staff in reducing these types of situations occurring, particularly where an applicant is designing to a maximum limit. A stop work order can be issued much sooner, where a survey requirement has been imposed by the district to ensure construction does not proceed until zoning compliance is confirmed. This new procedure may slow construction development in some cases and incur complaints from builders, but will likely reduce the possibility of non-compliant structures. Staff are also considering an amendment to the definition of height that might provide additional measuring options and steps for the architect or designer to complete both in the application stage as well as through the construction stage. It is anticipated that an exemption for the flood construction level will be maintained. It is important to plan for the need to mitigate flood concerns from ocean level. Finally, I want to thank the homeowners who brought forward the frustrations with their fence being demolished while on holidays, and that it still hasn't been replaced a year later. Although I was not happy to read this, the property owner will be preparing a landscape plan which proposes a fence around the entire property as well as planting trees and shrubs. Security would be required for the full cost of the fencing and planting as a condition of issuance of the DVP if approved. The security would ensure the implementation of the landscape plan with at least a 50% portion kept for 3 years after all planting is completed to ensure sufficient survival of all plantings. I want to thank the District of Sechelt planning staff, Davis Bay Community Associations, and all residents for the time and all the work they've done to bring their concerns forward and for working towards a solution and changes to mitigate these types of incidents in the future. With all this in mind, I will be making a motion to support the recommendations in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's a motion. We'll look for a seconder. We have a seconder. Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. And Councillor Shepherd, did you have your trigger finger ready?
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, just to echo Councillor Bell's comments, this has been a really difficult issue to go through. And, you know, I resent some of the comments and the letters that have come in saying that council's waffling on it. And I don't think that's true. I think council's trying to find a compromise here. And I don't regret that we went off looking for, instead of an either or answer to this, that we sought a third way where we looked for a benefit for the homeowner, that they didn't have to spend the cost reducing the size of the building, and at the same time tried to find a benefit for the Davis Bay community. So I don't regret that. We had a good meeting with the Davis Bay Community Association and the property owner. Both of them objected to this compromise for different reasons, and that's fair enough. We couldn't work it out. So in my mind, it actually comes back to an either-or situation. I think the homeowners has effectively paid a penalty because the stop work order has delayed work on the house for so long. I think it was really an honest mistake in the building of the building. So I don't think we should be penalizing the property owner. Again, as Councillor Bell mentioned. So, however, I can't support this. I think this motion, I think the residents have said, follow the bylaw, and even though an honest mistake was made, I'm going to actually support another option, which is option 2 mentioned on page 4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I don't have any prepared remarks. I just wanted to thank the Community Association for participating in this, for expressing their concerns, wanting, clarity on the process, not wanting to sort of be a part of the decision-making process on this. I can appreciate that. When I was looking at this initially, I don't want to see materials having to go to landfill or, the costs and expenses of dealing with deconstruction and retrofit of a structure that's not even done yet. But I did want to see a benefit for the community in lieu of this, and I don't see a benefit to the community in lieu of this. But I'm still not in favor of sending material from an unfinished house to the landfill. So I'll be supporting the recommendation that's on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Inkster.
Thank you, Chair. This issue has been in front of us a number of times. I do think we could have made a decision originally, as I had said then. The request by some members of council to go back to the community to negotiate a deal, basically a deal for a variance for a large building in their area, I had trouble with. But I was prepared to support council asking those questions of the community to see if compromise could be met. That seemed to be the test for some council members, to see if that compromise and a community amenity would be given to the neighborhood and or the Davis Bay Association. That was the test that I had been told at that point would be the reason to support it. That test was not met. So I'm wondering why those that introduced that are still supporting it. Nevertheless, I did, as I had then, sided with the community on this one because we have rules in place. The building is large, and there's a building nearby that council should be aware of if they travel throughout this community that was built with the I guess the flood piece in mind, and it's quite a nice house. So they did it properly. So we should be encouraging all to do it properly. I have been told by some that this doesn't set a precedent for large buildings going in if we do approve this. Others have said it won't set a precedent because they wouldn't want us to set a precedent. I disagree. I would say to this council that this will set a precedent for other people over a number of years when this council's not here to ask for larger buildings when the nearby older houses are upgraded as this was, because this was a cabin, much like the house nearby that was built to our standards was a cabin and a newer home was added. So I see a precedent being set here. I also see the community originally in non-support, but in small numbers. Now we're seeing larger, more clearly written letters by a number of community members to say to us, we shouldn't support this. A rule was broken. And it's a number of well-written letters. It could be suggested that perhaps a number of people talk to each other about this, but they put their names to letters. So there's some integrity there to the information they put down and the concerns that they have with a very large house in their neighborhood that will block views of some and be a large house in the neighborhood to others that will set a precedent. That having all been presented, I will stick with my original view. I will side with the community. I will be saying no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Inkster. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you through the chair. I was just noticing in the planning report, it said the plans were not adhered to with the subfloor, and the first floor was higher than approved plans. So that tells me we should have been, everybody should have been able to get a handle on this sooner. It also says that the 8.5 meter height is generally intended to allow for 2 full stories with design flexibility rather than 3 stories. So this is, to me, kind of a little more backstory to what was intended. Isn't necessarily what happened. And then also, I'm wondering with the other, there's some adjacent cleared lots as well. And I don't know who owns them or what's planned there, but it looks like they've, buildings have been demolished, lots have been cleared. So I think if this is an important precedent that I don't want to see continued. So I will not be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rowe, your turn.
Sorry. I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this, both on the behalf of staff and the community members. My decision hasn't changed though, which is I will be voting against this. I think, we have these regulations for a reason, and I just don't want to see us go outside of that. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps I've got some comments, but I'd like to just refer to staff about the issue of precedent, because that's been a long-standing concern. So, Mr. Hall, do you have some comments for us?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for these types of applications, the concern around precedents always comes up. I mean, a development variance permit is ultimately still a discretionary decision of council. So unlike a development permit where it's a question of does it meet the development permit area guidelines or meet enough of them that council's satisfied that it meets it, the variance is well and truly whether or not council decides they want to support it or not. There's no real rationale to say, okay, if someone gets a height variance, that someone else is going to get a height variance on the neighboring lot. It's going to come down to the site-specific application and the reasons for why they needed a variance in the first place. It's always a difference where if somebody is designing something and comes to us first and said, you know what, we can't meet the height limit or we can't meet a setback for these reasons. So can we get a variance in advance of doing it versus building something and then finding out that they're non-compliant after the fact. But either way, yeah, I guess from the staff perspective, we're not really concerned about a precedent setting, because what we're trying to do is get to a place where, as much as possible, we're eliminating the possibility of these things happening after the fact. It's one thing if somebody wants to do it beforehand, but as Councillor Bell mentioned, I mean, we've already made some process improvements, and we're considering some other bylaw changes to help address these kinds of issues in future.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Toth, do you want to? Go ahead.
Thank you. Taking stock of, you know, the comments that other members have said, I can see where the vote's likely to go here. I still hate the idea of putting material in the landfill or, you know, whatever's gonna have to happen to do deconstruction. I did have one clarification question, though. Like, the intention is for it to be sort of two-story buildings, and the applicant has squeezed in a third story within the height definition that they are theoretically allowed to do if they hadn't gone over. 8.5 meters is what the height requirement is now. I'm wondering if staff can just remind us of what the height requirement was under bylaw 25. Thank you.
Sure.
Good question. In pretty much all the residential zones under bylaw 25, the previous height limit was 10.5 meters, which definitely would have allowed for a three-story building. So as part of zoning bylaw 580, we reduced the height in those sort of single-family residential zones from 10.5 down to 8.5.
Sure, if you want to pick up on something on precedent.
Yeah,
Actually, no, if I may, I'll take my turn. I agree with staff on that as far as precedent. And if anything, I think anybody looking at building in the district of Sechelt will see this process as a clear reminder that, hey, better be real careful. If you don't assume there's a precedent, because we're sitting here today saying, certainly I'm saying this is not going to create a precedent for me. The other component, I think, to the whole thing is, and I guess, folks, we've got to remember, this is not about the size of the house. The house is bigger than the surrounding areas, houses, but it's not that big on Davis Bay on the Parkway. You know, we've got the west, Pier 17. I actually went and flew my drone around to get an idea of the view and the viewscapes. And given that the house itself, other than the 16 inches that we've been talking about, is in accordance with our bylaws, as staff have confirmed, the only thing before us is whether the 16 inches is something that warrants a fairly dramatic change to the property. And I note that staff have given us a number of reasons why they support the resolution. I think, Councillor Bell, you said it very well. I think there have been perhaps mistakes made by a number of people, and I think that's something for us to consider. I would say, you know, our duty is to act in the best interests of the district of Sechelt. And yes, we've had some very thoughtful, well-written letters, but that's not the only people impacted by this. So I'm not as inclined to say because we got a certain number of negative letters, you know, that is how we should vote. So yeah, I think for all of those reasons, and in particular the one about the uncertainty and the learnings that have gone on between the different here within staff, and certainly I think the building community will be doubly concerned before they start coming close to whatever the 8.5, or we might be changing it through the OCP with sea level rise considerations. So, you know, I think one, to me, it's not a precedent. Don't anybody assume that. Two, I think it's we've got some mistakes that have been made or some learnings that have been had over the last several months, and I agree with Councillor Toth to make a dramatic requirement on this home is out of proportion to the issue. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, thank you. just speaking to a number of the issues and the question of precedent setting, when we're not here in a number of years, we won't be here to argue that we would suggest, and we would argue that it's not precedent setting. Others in the community will make that decision and discussion. And they will say, there was a precedent made in building that height. And so, and people can shake their head, but I just disagree. I think that it's there and precedent setting. And in terms of mistakes made by a number of different people, I'm not interested in that. There's just a building that's too tall there. I'm not going to point fingers. But what I would suggest is the community didn't make a mistake. What the community did was trust us to follow the OCP. They did not make any mistakes. And when we talk about builders being afraid of going close to the height, we have a number of local builders that most likely would know the rules and haven't gone close to the height because we don't have another number of or large numbers of examples of these mistakes. And we're how many building happening this year, building permits, what, 100 to 100 to 150 every year? And we're not seeing this. So obviously our other builders know the rules. So I'm not buying those arguments, and it strengthens my argument to not support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, through the chair. I don't think equating this building to a commercial building, multi-story commercial building or a apartment building is really a fair comparison. And also, I think when you're looking at sea rise and you're building buildings on a plinth, sand, to raise them up, I think that does have context in the community, that we shouldn't necessarily be building as heavily as we can on the land, because we're already in a sensitive place. If we weren't, we wouldn't be building it on a plinth of sand. So I think, you know, it behooves us to actually maybe consider the massing and the size of buildings along the waterfront, just because they are, you know, first in line for damage and for, in terms of liability, et cetera. So smaller buildings that aren't 3 stories would actually be my preference, having gone through this whole process. We should be living more lightly on the land in areas where there's sensitive ecosystems and where we will definitely facing sea rise sooner probably than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin, and that's certainly something to be addressed when we get to the OCP discussions. At the moment, my point is in terms of commercial buildings or apartments, it's about, I was remarking on the views, the impact on the views. I think but the issue of what do we do on waterfronts is something well worth having. I know that's what the community association is asking, that what is all of the parkway going to look like in 10 or 20 years? And that's something that will come to us, but that is not something before us today. Today we're here discussing 16 inches. Councillor Rowe, anything I want to check in? Yeah, thank you. Okay. Anything else? All right, council, I'll call the question if you're ready. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Motion is defeated. So how do you wish to proceed? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, go ahead, Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, I'll move that council approve option 2 on top of page 4.
Seconder? Second. Okay. Do you want to speak to it?
Well, I think a lot of the comments that have come forward are in support of holding to the existing bylaw, and that's what option 2 reflects. So I don't think there needs much more explanation than that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to this again because I'm going to be voting in favor of denying this, even though I voted in favor of passing it. And the way I look at any of these votes that we take at the council table is you sort of, if you've got an idea on where you'd like to go, you sort of fight for that perspective. If you don't, you know, if you can't convince your colleagues of that perspective, next best option. And so from my perspective, next best option is at this point denying the application. I'm still not really supportive of the upheaval, but I do appreciate the comments that Councillor McLaughlin has made and that Councillor Inkster has raised regarding both community and fit and the scale of the scale of the massing of the building on the land. These are things that we do need to have a conversation about as part of OCP renewal and zoning changes going forward, because yeah, what might work on flat inland parts of Seashell doesn't necessarily work on hillsides, doesn't necessarily work on waterfront. We are a very diverse community, so we need to definitely have more conversations. Thanks.
Councillor Shepherd.
Just volleying back to Councillor Toth, I'm trying to understand where you're moving towards, though. You're not in support of the original recommendation from staff, but where are we heading to? I mean, that's why I'm supporting option number 2, because we're following the bylaw. Echoing the mayor's comments, we're trying to do the best thing for the entire community. And I think this is it. We're holding to the guideline so that we don't have to deal with these variance requests after the buildings are built. To me, this is the most frustrating point of these items that are coming before council. So how do we avoid that in the future? What's the best thing for the community? Hold to the bylaw. So I don't know what other end point there is in this. Thanks.
Thanks. No, I've been struggling with it this whole time, right since the first time we saw it, because this whole asking for forgiveness thing, like you say, it gets tiresome. I do acknowledge that I don't believe that it was an intentional effort to deceive the staff or the community. They chose to build right to the cusp of what's allowed, and it bit them because of mistakes that were made. And I think the comments that were made about the process that this has gone through, the amount of time that's been spent on it, I think has served as punishment enough in light of an inability to get some sort of something for the community. Which is why I was okay with approving the variance as suggested by staff. I do have another motion after we finish voting on this, so, I'm not done. But I don't have another option at this time to put forward, so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
Just to add one more bit to that, another factor that just makes this so difficult to decide on. Even when you reduce the building 16 inches, and I think even some of the residents will acknowledge, you've still got a massive building. It's not going to satisfy everyone that, oh, we've suddenly got a building that's much more reasonable in scale. It's not going to be. So, but yeah, to Councillor Inkster's comments, we've got to be looking forward to stop these things happening again. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, I think I want to really make sure, council, we are only, you're right, I agree with that statement. It's a big building, but it's within our bylaws except for that. Yeah. And so all we're talking about is the 16 inches. We can change the bylaws so that they can be different structures for the future, but right now, we can't do anything beyond the 16 inches. Counselor Inkster.
Yeah, I'm, maybe we'll be ready to go to the vote after this. Because I see where we're going. Yeah, although you do have an additional motion, so we'll see where that goes. But, you know, this is another point. We talk about how large the building is and how it will be with the changes that we're hoping to happen. And it makes you wonder why you couldn't build within that large building envelope originally. Because it's big. It's gonna be big if the changes are made. So, you know, why couldn't we have stayed there? Thanks.
Well, is that a comment about the height or the size of the overall structure?
Well, I'll clarify, if you'd like
Please.
me to.
Yes.
So, a number of council members have made the statement, and I myself have made that, and then anybody who passes by have made the statement, it's a large house. It meets the standards of, and or the OCP as it sits. So why go over that? It's already a large building that meets the standards, why go over it? Thanks.
Okay, so that is, you're discussing the 16 inches. All right, thank you. Okay, then we'll call the question. All in favor of denying the application? I'm opposed. Two opposed. The motion carries. Counselor Toff, you have another motion.
Thank you. Looking at page 4, the second to last paragraph talks about staff potentially preparing an amendment to the zoning bylaw respecting definition of height and clarity on how to measure height. I'm not going to ask for staff to go forward and propose that or to bring that amendment back to us, but I do want to propose that staff bring back a report respecting possible changes to the zoning bylaw regarding definitions and clarity for the measurement of height and sea level height.
Okay, have you written that or was that?
I just wrote it, but I can
Yeah,
forward
can
it to
you,
the
can you
corporate
say it
staff.
again? Just-
Yep, that staff bring back a report respecting possible changes to the zoning bylaw regarding definitions and clarity for the measurement of height and sea level height. Because it's basically what's identified in the paragraph. But I
Yes,
don't
that-
want staff to go forward with bylaw. Like, I don't have a direction for staff to go forth and make changes on the zoning bylaw. But I do want to hear more about this and the potential for
About
changes,
the definitions.
about the
for-
definitions
see.
and, yeah.
Okay, so this is a motion for us to have some clarity. Sorry, I should be asking for a seconder before I comment. Seconder? Yeah? Yeah, okay. All right, so, okay. Concerns? Yes, Mr. Hall.
Just a point of clarification with the sea level rise piece, do you mean like the flood construction level? Like how to determine flood construction level?
So perhaps. Thank you. So it was perhaps, yeah, I said sea level. I actually said sea level measurements in what I originally wrote. Which I suppose flood construction level is the technical term that I should be using in my motion, so.
I think it's to
I
get
hope
it,
for a friendly amendment.
But I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
but
still,
getting at the vertical piece where in this case, where the bylaw says 2 meters above the level, and that's what you're trying to get at, that
Yeah.
regulation, okay?
yeah, I think it might be is at the second last paragraph that already in the staff report there, talking about what is an appropriate FCL. So perhaps your motion is as much to please give this some priority.
Honestly, I don't think we know enough. And, you know, as we're going into the OCP conversations, if staff have something in mind, I'd like to hear more about it. And I think this is the way we can hear more about it without going down a path. Like I said, I don't know what the answer to this is, so I'm not prepared to move an answer tonight, but I would like more information about it from staff.
Thank you. Counselor Inkster?
Yeah, I hope that this is, I mean, it's mentioned here in the report. Staff has indicated they potentially can look into this. So, and it's been proposed, it was noticed by council and it will be proposed. I'm okay to ask staff to do that. And I'm interested in their replies, although it'll be interesting to see the definitions with the sea level rise and all the issues associated with that and the definition of how high it's rising and things like that. Because even at the council table, we disagree on that issue. My legal concern is, will this report supersede the previous decision we just made?
I agree. It's not, it's a report on clarity, on definitions and.
Okay, well, sure. I mean, 3 council members answered my question. I'm just putting it out there that I have concerns that it will have a superseding issue. Thanks.
Hey, Councillor Toth, you get the last word.
Darn, because I was going to invite Councillor Inkster to provide a little more clarity into his comment. I'm not asking for bylaw changes. That's the key. If this whole thing has been about following the bylaw, I'm not actually asking for a bylaw change at this time. I'm just asking for a little more context or information that might feed into a future bylaw change. It might be that we come back, staff have some information on how to better refine the definitions, and we make a motion that staff incorporate it as a housekeeping amendment to the next update of the zoning bylaw. Zoning bylaw changes are not retroactive. We know this. This is not anything new. So I don't see how it could possibly supersede the decision that we made tonight. Thanks.
Okay. I'll call the question on that motion. All in favor? Clarity? Opposed? Councillor Shepherd? Okay, opposed? Very good. All right. Thank you, staff, for all your work on this. We will move on to agenda item 5.2, which is the active transportation grant application. I see we have Mr. Bandera here. This starts on page 47, Council. So, before Council got any, well, Council want to move a motion or follow due process? Yes. Okay, seconded. Okay, so we have, the motion is, well, any discussions on, this is on page 47, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on page 48, right underneath the grant opportunity line. It does say that this design is complete and shovel ready. We know that this has been an area that has had concerns raised by the community. It's been in our sort of capital sites for a number of years. I think it's an opportunity for us to use both grant funding if we can get it. And I think the Growing Communities Fund talks about, this sort of infrastructure. I think this is a good opportunity to do exactly this project with that money. So support it. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I pick up on that? When is shovel ready and the estimated cost is 1.455? When, how current is that estimate?
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Yes.
I would like to answer that question. That is a 2025 dollar value, the estimate, plus another 10% we did extra contingency portion because we don't know the starting date 2025, 2026, that depending on the grant notification. So we added some 10% extra onto that $2025 value.
Okay, thank you. So it's a current estimate plus 10%.
Yeah.
Very good. Councillor Inkster? Oops, sorry, Councillor McLaughlin. Thank you.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I was looking for this project in the transportation plan, and I didn't really see this particular part of Jasper Avenue, or Jasper Road, because so it seems to me in that report, and I realize it is 2009 report, it wasn't an issue, and it wasn't a project, and it wasn't a priority. So, and I also realize, having traipsed around there myself a little bit, is that there is a cut through that goes from Jasper to Northwest Bay Road. It's like half done and half not done, but I have taken that cut through. So there is a way to go as a pedestrian and get onto Norwest Bay Road and get onto the proper sidewalks, et cetera. But I just wondered if you could comment on that and give us your opinion on why this project is important.
Okay, just, can I clarify? So the question, Councilor McLaughlin, is it, because we're here talking about whether we would apply for a grant for a sidewalk. So your question is, would the cut-through eliminate the need for a sidewalk? Or half?
Well, I mean, obviously, the sidewalk is higher quality, better, et
yeah.
cetera. But I just wondered, like, are there issues with that cut through? Are people aware of it? Also, that is kind of a tricky intersection. So I would be a little concerned that if we built a nice sidewalk, that kids might be tempted to just try and race across Norwest Bay Road there instead of going down to the crossing at Derby where it's clearly marked as a crossing. I'm just thinking, you know, if you build it, the kids might interpret it as being the way to go, just because they're in a rush to get to school or whatever. So maybe some
Okay.
special signage or something could help with that. I don't know if that's been included, but yeah, I'm going to just question whether you doing the cut through would be sufficient that we
Okay.
already have.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. So Ms. Lee, do you want to remark first, or?
Sure, thank
Yeah.
you, yes. So even right now, people are using that route. And so building a sidewalk is going to make it inherently safer, of course. I don't think the cut through I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it provides the same safety or the same connection or the same accessibility, which I think is significant here. And this is a gap, certainly in this neighborhood, that's been spoken to by many people in that neighborhood, that they genuinely want this safety feature. So I don't think the cut through is going to be sufficient. Perhaps there could be some signage and it could be an alternate connection, but it wouldn't perform the same function.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, Councilor Mixer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This proposal is the continuation of the connectivity in the newer neighborhoods in West Seashelt. And this is Old Jasper, so this is linking up Old Jasper to New Jasper. So a sidewalk is most likely needed because of the fast track that's coming up Norris Bay and off quick, and or down Norris Bay and a quick right turn onto this area. So we probably need to get people up off of that road. That's why I think staff's proposing it. The issues we have going forward, though, that we need to consider is that Mills doesn't have a sidewalk, and it has ditching, and it's got the same problems. The difference is that it's wide open and it doesn't have the challenges of the curved road and the trees growing over the road that Jasper does. So that's why I think staff's focusing on this. And the other thing that we do need to consider, and I hope staff looks at it, and I think that Ms. Lee is aware of it, is the cut through that was mentioned, and I'm glad that Councillor McLaughlin saw it, is that it's a problem. And I've mentioned it to staff before. It's a problem with visibility, and it's
At Nickerson.
Pardon?
At Nickerson.
No,
Norwest, I mean.
No,
at
it's a
Norwest
cut
Bay.
through at Mills.
Yeah.
That's what Councillor McLaughlin's referring to as a cut through that basically would be considered coming off Norris Bay through to Mills, and or a cut through coming off Nickerson to Norwest Bay to Mills. If council knows where we are, it's a little bit of an issue going forward if we do this sidewalk. So hopefully they can cut back some trees and maybe do something about grading that area, because it's just the bottom portion is good, but the top portion is a driveway. It seems to be a right of way for us, and you can't see people coming on and off the cut through onto our sidewalk system, and or so if kids coming on bikes, they can't be seen flying onto Jasper. So I think staff's well aware of it, and I mentioned it to staff, but I'm good with this. It's just that we need to look at a number of other changes in the area in order to continue the safe connectivity. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd.
I just have a question over the funding. I'm not sure if I understand correctly. So we have 60% grant funding in place?
No.
And no?
We've got
We're
to apply
applying
for
for
it,
it.
yes.
And are we assuming, sorry, that 40% is going to come from the Growing Community Fund, or are we looking for other grant funding?
I think that's the latter.
Okay,
And actually, if I was, I'm not going to worry about it, but in priority to me, it's let's see if we can get 60% from the federal government. Then we'll find hopefully 40% from somebody else, and we won't need any money from us.
all right.
But if we don't have money, if we don't get all of that 40% from somewhere else, then we would be using the Growing Communities Fund to top up.
Okay, so does this come back to us if we get the 60% grant funding but don't obtain other funding and have to go back to the Growing Community Fund?
Mr. Bandera, or, oh, sorry, Mr. Douglas?
Yeah, thank you. No, it would come back as information, but it wouldn't come back. If we get the motions that are there, the plan would be to apply for the grant. The matching would be the 40 from the reserve. And in the meantime, we're going to be looking for other opportunities to make up to that 40% from other grants.
Okay, thanks. That's really helpful. I'm actually, I don't know, I think voting against everything tonight, but I'm sort of edging away from edging towards not supporting this. I know there are lots of advantages to the community. I'm simply becoming more and more alarmed as we go through successive budgets about depleting capital reserves. And I know that's what this money is intended for. It's just that we've had other infrastructure projects, 22, 23, millions of dollars over budget. And we're depleting our reserves to the point where, and I think it was a good point from the mayor saying, hey, we are having to look at not 3% taxation to refill reserves, but closer to 5. And that's because we keep depleting reserves. So as much as this project will benefit the community, I'm sort of moving away from supporting projects where we automatically take money from reserves. If we could get 100% grant funding from other sources, I'd be 100% in support of it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I actually, Mr. Douglas, something that gave me comfort in the report was on page 48, just above policy and bylaw implications, where it says council will have the opportunity to consider this project again once additional funding sources are identified. I took that to be, okay, we've got grants, and it would come back to us at that point to say, yes, we want to proceed with this project or not. So if you're saying this is de facto approving the project, then I would share your concern.
Often when you're applying for one grant, they like you to have secured your portion.
Yes,
If you haven't, there's a good chance you won't be considered.
understood. Yeah.
So it's important that we put there that we have funding for this project and our side funding. And but even though we have our side funding, we're committing to looking for other grants. There's nothing out there right this minute. We're anticipating, as in any year, that grants do come out throughout the year. So we don't see anything right now, but we're committed to looking for it.
Yeah, I think, and that's given and appreciated. I think the key is, of course, in grant funding, you have to say, we have our part ready, but it's different than committing to doing the project. So I think that's the issue for me is, yes, I like this, especially if it's 100%. If we come back and say it's going to be 10% from our money, we might say yes. But if it's 40%, or we get cost escalations, we always want to have the option to say no. So I'm not sure where to go with this motion. I mean, the motion doesn't in itself define that we will proceed with the project. Right?
Sorry, that's
Yeah.
what we're hearing from Director Douglas, though.
Understood,
Or
but the
if-
motion is simply to apply for grants rather than to approve the project. So I think I can support the motion because we are not explicitly saying, and we will proceed if we get 60%. Counselor Inkster, yes, keep your hand up. So,
Okay, sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, you guys were going back and forth,
Now-
so I wasn't sure if you saw me. Yeah, a number of the points were in reference to grants are interesting ones. The fact of the matter is, though, is that when the federal government and or provincial government looks at granting municipalities money, they look for a partnering situation. They look for municipalities to buy into a project and support the project with their own work and their own studies and their own needs, and their municipalities to step up with cred, I guess we'll call it, to put their own money forward, and they look for those partnering opportunities. The alternative is 100% project funding all the time by outside governments. Wouldn't that be great? I think that's more of a fantasy world, so I think that we need to be able to step up with partnering money so that we can secure money to get a number of infrastructure projects completed that are safety orientated. Thank you.
Counselor Rowe, I see your hand up, and then Counselor McLaughlin.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little bit with Counselor Shepherd on this. I'm a bit budget shy. But through you to Director Douglas, can he refresh us of what our balance is ballpark in that reserve that we're?
Oh, right. On page 49.
Oh, sorry,
No,
my bad.
No, I didn't have it either. Okay, so there's the answer to that question. Is that okay, Counselor Rowe? Anything else?
Well, my only concern is that we haven't really seen what this new provincial government has in front of them as far as budget goes and how generous they're going to be granting. I don't have a lot of confidence right now. So I'm not inclined to support this at this time. I'm a bit gun shy with regards to having to commit that amount of money.
Okay, I'll take that for the moment, and we'll circle back. Counselor McLaughlin?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I'm just wondering if, I mean, I usually like development to put in nice sidewalks for us. Now that block, I don't know how keen they are on redeveloping, but I'm wondering also, I know the community amenity contribution rules have sort of changed. They can be broader than they were in the past, and I'm wondering if we might be able to identify this as a special project where if we get amenity contributions, we could apply them here because it does serve the whole community. And it is an important intersection. And it is really geared, I think, for accessibility and to kids that are going to school, et cetera. And it does link up to our bike path system, which we've put a lot of money and effort into, getting nicely done recently. So I guess that's a question for the planning department about, is that a possibility?
Okay, I think the topic before us is whether or not to apply for a grant. So I think I would be ready to make a motion after we voted on this, if it was approved, to clarify that we want the project to come back to us before we proceed. But Councillor Bell, sorry,
Through the chair, yes, I completely agree that I think we're all budget shy right now. Totally don't disagree with that, but I'm a little unclear. So am I understanding this is just to support or not support applying at this
Yes.
point? So I think
well, that is the motion.
yes, this is the motion, but we don't seem to be on track here. So we're applying, and then why are we talking about whether we get it or we not get it? What we're concerned about, whether it's going to come back to us if it's not approved at this point, or we don't get 60%, or, it's unclear where we're going with this. I
Right.
think we're
Okay.
getting off track, so I'm having a hard time understanding how to support this motion.
Okay, Counselor Toth, I see Counselor Rowe's hand up as well, but let you go. Let's try and tighten this up on what are we actually voting on and.
Thank you, Counselor Bell, because I was ready to go right down into the weeds and talk about other funding sources for portions of it. And fundamentally, yeah, do we want to apply for this grant or not? Because at the end of the day, because of the size of the construction contract, like, there's going to be a number of checkpoints with council on this project, regardless of whether we get the grant or not. It's not like this is the only time we'll see it, and the next thing we know, we're gonna have a sidewalk and $580,000 less money. So I think there's gonna be a number of checkpoints along the way, and so I think we should apply.
Right. Okay, I see the Counselor Rowe, Counselor Shepherd, and Counselor Inkster. Counselor Rowe.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, by applying for the grant, we are committing to that 580 as our portion unless we're able to find other grants to cover it. So while this is the way I understand it anyways, while it is just the motion whether we apply for the grant or not, we have to put that 580 aside until we know whether we get that grant or not.
That's a good,
Essentially.
that's, okay, so that's a good point. Do we have any idea of, like, I don't know with the Housing Infrastructure and Communities, are they approving on a rolling basis? Is it, Mr. Bender? You know, when the if we submit an application tomorrow, does is there a deadline where everybody applies? Or can we submit and they might respond in 2 months? Like, what is the time frame to get an answer back to an
It's a good question. The staff has contacted the grant team, and what we received at this point, we don't want to submit a municipal commitment, the what you call this, the letters for that this point. But once we qualified, that means we are the recipient. By that time, we have to sign the agreement. At that time, we have to provide our commitment for the construction full amount. The other thing is that they mentioned to us, this is the first time we saw that the stacking, there's no restriction for the stacking. That means that the growing community fund, reserve fund, and also Canada community building fund, or other grants coming from province, we can put it to this one at the later date. Even we can find someday, we can postpone to, because it's until 2030, so 1 year until we find the money. So there's a very flexibility on this.
Sorry, Mr. Bandera, so we're not sure of how soon we would get an answer if an application was filed tomorrow.
Oh, that one, we didn't get that confirmation yet.
On that, thank you. Counselor Bell is welcome to correct me, but I think this is the same granting stream that MP Weiler was suggesting track apply to. And what MP Weiler was saying was that this granting stream does have a really quick turnaround.
That's why I'm
I'm
asking.
looking
I
at it
think-
myself,
yeah.
and I'm not seeing a response date, but his indication was that it is intended to be like a 8-week turnaround. Like it's supposed to be a
That's-
fast turnaround.
Okay, so folks, this is we can't get into the weeds, so let's, you wanted to raise something, Counselor Shepherd? I just want to bring this to a
You know,
close if we can.
perhaps a compromise is if we added an amendment, a 1A paragraph to the effect that in the event that council or the district is successful in obtaining the 60% grant money, the project would come back to council for an agreement on funding sources.
Yes, okay. Okay, so, I mean, let's be procedural. That's an amendment, a motion to amend. Okay, to add item 2. And that's seconded.
Yeah.
Is that, sorry, is that seconded?
Yeah, just
okay.
get Counselor
Yeah.
Shepherd in on this. I'm gonna support it.
Confirmation of funding sources? Did I interpret it?
Yeah, because if we get
Yeah.
but my intent is if we get the 60%, I'm not necessarily agreeing to the 40%. So I want it to come back to council and we look at other options for, maybe we have to wait for further grant money. Maybe we agree to 20%. So it's just a mechanism because I'm very confused here. Director Douglas is saying, no, this project's going through if we get the 60%. And I want to make sure, I want to
Make sure
hear
it's
that
back.
it's coming back. That's
Right.
all.
Great, thank you. To
I just-
speak to the amendment?
Yeah, all I,
Okay.
it's repeated. I
Oh,
have it repeated so I can hear it again, please. Thank you.
Excuse me. Please correct any errors if I missed any portion of it. But what I heard was that upon approval of the Government of Canada Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada grants active transportation funding for the Jasper Road Sidewalk project, that the project come back to council for project approval prior to proceeding with procurement. And
That's-
it's the,
that's
sorry, I should
quite-
add, upon receiving approval of the grant, that the project come back to council.
That's not quite what I said, but you know what? I think it well, it fits.
Coming back.
So I'm happy to vote on that.
okay, so this is a motion on the amendment. Purely on that. So all in favor of the amendment? Carried. Okay. So then we have a motion as amended in front of us. And can I suggest, council, we vote on that? Motion as amended? All, that's, so it's as printed on page 47 plus the amendment we just voted on. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bandera.
Yep.
We then go to the item 5.3, which is request for us to administer the funds. Who would like, is there anything to add? Seems to me fairly straightforward. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just straightforward to me. It all makes sense. I'd like to move the recommendations on page 53.
Seconded, okay? Any discussion? Please.
Just clarification, and it may be in here. It's just been a while since we've reviewed this. So this is saying that it is part 3, is that correct? Is it here? Part 3 of the Accessible BC Act on behalf of the District of Sechelt. Is that part 3? Is there more parts?
Please.
The Part 3 of the Accessibility Act, it includes all the requirements that public bodies must have a committee and they must have a plan.
Right.
So the plan is going to fulfill that requirement. And just to note, it's on behalf of the whole region. So District of Sechelt, Town of Gibsons, and the Sunshine Coast Regional District will all be included in this plan to satisfy that requirement in the legislation.
Excellent, okay. And financially, how is the breakdown?
Equal.
Equal. Yep.
Okay. So this is am I right? This is administering $15,000?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Let's spend another hour discussing it. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, folks, we go to item 6.1, which is on page 67. Have 5476 Mills Road. Mr. Hall, I guess you're here to answer questions and stuff. Is there, want a quick overview to
Sure,
start?
just a quick overview. So this property was rezoned last year, so council will potentially remember that process. So the applicants have come back with some additional tweaks to the existing zoning, looking at the minimum lot size, lot coverage, and setbacks. So in between the previous rezoning and now, what has changed is originally they were looking at having access come directly off of Mills Road for each of the lots. And I think in terms of the servicing, they may have figured that they could make it work. What has come back since then that they've looked at citing all the servicing on the rear of the properties and access from the rear of the properties. In terms of the initial conceptual design, we looked at that and wanted to have all of that as a public lane with public infrastructure rather than a rear private easement and private infrastructure. So by making it a public lane, it becomes a road dedication, and that subtracts land area from the overall property size, which makes them unable to meet the existing 300 square meter minimum lot size if they're trying to get 8 lots as they were originally trying to get. So now what is proposed in terms of these zoning changes with reducing the minimum lot size, increasing the lot coverage, and reducing the setbacks is to facilitate the original sort of 8 lot proposal. And now based on the small scale multi-unit housing changes that have happened over the last year, the goal would be that 6 of these lots would have a 4-plex and the 2 corner lots would have a 3-plex or triplex. And so the zoning bylaw has these changes kind of codified, and they would apply to the R6 zone, but again, only to this particular property. So not widespread changes to the R6 zone, just in regards to this particular property. And I think in terms of some of the concerns that have been raised, I wouldn't anticipate anyone else trying to copy small lots with a high lot coverage. There will be lots of challenges for the developer to deal with drainage on site and meet other bylaw requirements. So this isn't a big benefit for them. It's really to manage getting a lane to provide access and services and still try to accommodate the original vision, but ultimately not something that's going to be desirable to replicate in other areas. But it will have the advantage of.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Counselor Toth.
Thank you. I'm really interested in hearing what other members of council have to say about this. But I've got a question for staff in this public lane dedication. Actually will have a subdivision variance to reduce the lane down to 6 meters. My question is, if it's stays as a private driveway, easement, whatever, we don't take the lane dedication, how much of the property has to actually be given up to roadway? Fundamentally is my question. Those are getting to be pretty small lots with like 1.5 meters of grass all the way around it, and that's it. So it's tight, and I'm curious, what other options are out there? Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Hall, do you want to take a run at that? I think the first part was more about the road, if it was private, if it stayed as a strata road, that would change all the arithmetic.
Yeah, if it remains as a private easement, I guess they're not proposing a bare land strata. They would potentially stratify the buildings, but the lots would be non-strata, so it would be a private easement. I mean, I guess that has the advantage of it doesn't take land area away from each individual property, but functionally it renders that area unusable. So it's not like, even if it is a private easement, they're not getting bigger backyards. Like, that's still going to be a lane. It's still going to.
I suppose, just if I may, to pick up on that, it's some of the discussion and some of the input we've had relates to calculations of lot coverage and FAR and so on. If this was a private road, would that change those calculations? Because you would then presumably include the private road in the coverage, the lot area?
Yes, ultimately it would. I mean, the lot area would include the easement area. It doesn't subtract from the overall lot size, and therefore it probably they wouldn't need the lot coverage increase to the same extent. I guess from the staff perspective, functionally, that's still going to be a paved lane, even if it is just a private lane. So
No, I get the functional side.
yeah.
Yep, okay.
But yeah, it does
just a
change the
question,
calculus.
It does, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Counselor Inkster?
Yeah, the original proposal, when it came to council, I was that close to not supporting it based on the lot coverage and the larger homes on the lots right across from quarter acre lots with regular homes that had been there for a number of years. So this becomes even more difficult to support with the changes now proposed. My additional concern is the community association has concerns with this change. And I think that once again, we need to listen to some of their concerns with the change in the buildings in size and in scope. As I always do, though, too, I also am uncomfortable with the form and character. We have in that area on that particular set of roads, what I would call a mature neighborhood in West Sechelt. There's other areas that are newer neighborhoods up higher. So this is a mature neighborhood, and so we might be putting something that in that neighborhood that just doesn't fit at this point. Single-family houses that may have taken up more lot size than this council may have originally wanted, other than the fact that a number of us would like to see more housing, is a push for me and a stretch. But this is a big stretch for me, so I'm really uncomfortable with the application in front of us. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Shepherd?
Yeah, I'll pick up on Councillor Inkster's comments. I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable with it as well. Now, there is a letter of support from Habitat for Humanity saying this is exactly the kind of form housing that we need in the community. But, I've got the letter here from the West Sechelt Community Association. One of the first questions is it's resulting in a FAR of 1.54. And is there not, even under the sort of SHMU guidelines, isn't there a FAR that we're trying to stay to? And I don't see that in the report. Thanks.
The R6 zone does have a regulation in it that has a maximum FAR of 1.5. So they would be limited to that. So they would have to tweak that. So that's something that was existing from the R6 zone from the original rezoning. So I think you would see that.
Thank you. That's, so 1.5, because what we've been reading is it's quite a bit over. But now if the regulations allow 1.5. Yeah, just like, yes.
And in terms of lot coverage, I see from their letter, and actually the report as well, we're at 70% lot coverage. I'm usually in past applications like this, I've been in support of, because I know we desperately need housing. It's just that, again, as per Councillor Inkster's comments, we're really cramming a lot of housing onto very small lots. So I'm uneasy with it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Just Councillor Bell. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation because as we look forward, we talk about the challenges that we have around housing. Personally, and as I look at what's happening in other communities, this is going to be inevitable. Is it really a change in our mindset around what we're used to living with, larger lots, bigger houses, those kind of things, versus smaller lots, still functionable, still where people are living in small communities close to one another, very comfortable because they have a nice home to live in. So, it's kind of one of those things for me as I look forward. If it's a functional, if there's no concerns around issues around zoning and those kind of things, I am very supportive of going in this direction. I feel we really need to look at more and more housing, and how are we going to do that with the little land that we have available in Sechelt. So I'm going to be supportive of this. To me, it comes down to, we can look at these houses and say, okay, what are these going to cost? And that's the big thing. It doesn't fit here as this, But, you know, it's just one of those. So that's where I'm coming on. Philosophically, I think this is the direction we're going to need to go. I support this project.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, through the chair. I recall the OCP saying that we have an abundance of residential land here. I don't feel that we really are in the same situation as Vancouver, where lots are costing $1.5 million just for the lot. And so I think whereas maybe this type of approach might be necessary in a very tight urban area, I think it's inappropriate to go to this extent in our community at this point. When I first suggested, when we had the R2 zoning and the bigger lots before they were split in half for bungalows, I suggested that maybe they try this approach to put in multi-units on these bigger lots, which I think would be more palatable. But they said no, they wanted to subdivide the lots and put little bungalows on the lots. So that's what they did. Now, I'm kind of shocked that they've taken these very small bungalow lots and put 3 to 4 units on them. We're to the point now where I think the design inside is quite inferior, because the bedrooms are sometimes extremely small. There's no family space. There's no kitchen. It's really tight, almost like a junior 1-bedroom kind of situation in terms of the spaces, according to the floor plans. Plus, there's no yards, there's no patios, there's no balconies, there's no decks. I just don't think that's good enough or appropriate for Sechelt. If we want to do dense housing, it has to have amenities. It has to be very well designed, I think, to be worthwhile. So I would encourage the developer to go back, if they want to take this approach, to go back to the original R2 larger lots and apply it there. Now, another alternative the community has suggested, because they are extremely small lots, and I did suggest the back lane and townhouses. They said, no, they didn't want to do that. This is the developer. No, we don't need to do that. We're not going to do that. Well, here, this is sort of where we're going with this back lane and the servicing and the parking and the whatever 40 garbage cans that are going to be in the back there for pickup day. I don't even know about how that's going to work. But another thing they suggested, which
Sorry,
may be an
Councillor
option,
McLaughlin,
if I
can we-
could just finish.
No, just I want to make sure we get a chance to focus on each of your points.
Well, it's the same point. Reviewing the shortcomings of this design, the inappropriateness, the not need for desperate dollars to find land, but to perhaps say, take these smaller lots and put maybe a maximum, which was recommended by the Community Association, of a maximum of 3 units in these, configurations instead of 4. Because to me, it's just maxed out, and it's kind of, it's shocking, frankly.
Okay,
And I can't support that. Thank you.
very good. Thank you. So it's too dense. Can I clarify, you made a comment, there's no kitchens. That wasn't about this?
No, I'm
specific-
sorry. There's
that-
no dining rooms.
I see.
There is kitchens,
Yes,
but
okay.
there's just a couple of stools maybe for dining there. Yeah,
Right.
sorry. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you.
But there's very little living space. And,
Yep.
if you have a family with 3 bedrooms, you need more than a tiny little living space with a kitchen and no real
Okay.
place to live.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Inkster, and then we'll go to Councillor Rowe, Councillor Toth, and just before Councillor Inkster, I hope, did everybody we did get a letter, several letters, I think, today on this, one from the developer. That was sometime early, I don't know, noon, 1 o'clock, okay.
Well,
ahead,
yeah,
Councillor
well, thank
Inkster.
you. I mean, we did get a number of letters. Of course, the developer's promoting it, but the West Sechelt Association has a number of concerns, and they represent a lot of people in that area. I think this is a suite too far in terms of the new proposal. Like I'd indicated previously, I had difficulty with the lot coverage previously. I mean, if council wants to envision what we're going to put across from regular family homes in what's called a mature neighborhood, And we have to consider that that neighborhood was originally strip lots that went from the highway all the way up to Norwest Bay. So it was considered just not, it was about 20 years ago, rural. A lot in that neighborhood, that particular part of West Sechelt is rural, and now we're gonna put what I. What?
Whoops,
Oh,
You-
sorry, you guys. I'm sorry.
unmuted.
Okay,
Yelling at the dog.
Yeah.
oh, yelling at the dog, okay. Okay, I've done that. So what I'm envisioning is high tide, if everyone knows where high tide is, putting it right across the street from a number of single-family homes in West Sechelt. That's what I see that we're prepared to accept. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Rowe. Now you can unmute, please.
I'm sorry, through you to Counselor Inkster, was he just comparing this to high tide supportive housing being across the street from a mature residential neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I want to make sure I heard that right. Uh, Is this my favorite thing? No. Is this I think what we're looking here, folks, is a bit of a new reality. And I think, hindsight's always 20/20, but what's gotten us into this scenario that we're in is all these beautiful single-family homes with one or two people that are living in them on the Sunshine Coast. And I will be voting in support of this. I think this is the intention. My son right now, who can't afford to live anywhere else, is living in a 10 by 10 space. So even the smallest micro suite with a hot plate would look like paradise to him. And I think we need to be open to accepting all sorts of and sizes of housing on the coast. And I think a lot of times that's going to find us sitting in areas of discomfort. And this might be one of them, but overall, I'm going to be supporting this project. And, I've spent the last 10 years working short-staffed, and I think we need to do what we can to have a variety of housing for single people and for young families. And it might not be perfect, but it's still going to be an option, which is more than what we've been able to say. Thank you.
Very good. I thank you for those comments. You saved me from saying some of them. Counselor Toth, are you ready or?
Thank you. Still struggling with it. I think I'm supportive of giving it first reading tonight. It says here for, up to 3 readings. We've heard from the West Sechelt Community Association. The last time something on Mills came along, we heard from the neighborhood as well. And we've heard nothing from the neighborhood. So I don't know if that's because they're unaware of it or if they're okay with it. But I think I'd like to know, or like an opportunity to sort of hear a little more from them. These are small units. And I think it's interesting that even when we're talking about, 900 square foot units, we're still looking at 2 bathrooms in every unit. Like there's a lot of fixtures in these units even. So when we talk about, water consumption, things like that, if I'm looking to buy one of these units, you can get by with 1 bathroom, but the extra floor space, I think, makes a big difference when the units are this small. And so I would strongly urge the developer to consider that before they submit for building permits, should this pass. I know we're not getting into this level of detail, but it's just an observation, and every square inch of space counts when you get down this small. That's it for me, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, my turn. First of all, the letter from the developer, if council hasn't seen it, this references housing needs report, indicated the 726 new housing units needed by next year. That this project will help work towards achieving that goal. And they are working with Cover the Coast. Kelly Foley has been engaged by the developer to assist in exploring options to work with nonprofit organizations and the essential worker stakeholders. One of the options being explored is a developer build to lease model. I don't want to be asked to read the West Sechelt letter and all the other letters, but given council hasn't seen this one, I think that's the premier comments that they've made, a 2-page letter. My comments echo a lot of what Councillor Rose said. I doubt many of you have lived in a place as small as I did for 6 months in Hong Kong, and I can tell you 300 square feet was very livable. It's very different than living in a house in Sechelt, but I think that Councillor Rowe is spot on. We have to, this is what we're here for, folks. We're being challenged by the province. We're being challenged by economics. If it's going to be affordable, the only way to do it is make it smaller. And so I think that this is something we need to proceed with. Will it be perfect? No. If they don't, maybe they don't need 2 bathrooms and they'll turn one into, you know, a closet. A bedroom. No, I didn't go that far. I saw Councillor Inkster's hand and then Councillor Bell.
Closet with a toilet in it? So I know what people are speaking to about the need for housing. This council has approved a lot of housing over the last 2 years. So never suggest that this group is not recognizing the need for more housing. And this project has sat there for a while, much like a number of the projects that we've approved. But we've approved a number of projects in West Sechelt and more recently up near the Sechelt Arena and near downtown. So we're working on providing housing as quick as we can for the community by approving the developments with zoning changes and or in some cases more units per hectare. So that then gives us, I think, some maneuverability to suggest to these particular proposals to maybe come back with a revision. And at the very most, as Councillor Toth was suggesting, I would be okay with the first reading, but I don't want to give it life in that sense. I just want to send a message that we need to, we're not approving, I'm not approving, not us, as it looks now. I'd love to see them do further revisions to their proposal. I'm really surprised based on the conversations we had previously that number of us had trouble with the smaller buildings in the lot usage previously, and then they came back with a change. I'm really perplexed by reading of the room. Nevertheless, I'm okay, maybe okay with one.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I guess for me, what I'm struggling with is just some of the comments. Will it be perfect? You know, where are those coming from? How do we know it won't be perfect? How does the person that moves in here that wants this house, maybe it will be perfect for them? I live in 900 square feet. I'm very comfortable living in 900 square feet. Now, but the reality is that we don't have stock. We don't have options for people to be able to buy homes in Sechelt. And I think this is what we really need is the options of stock here. And that's why, again, I'm going to support this.
Okay, so I didn't get a motion at the beginning, but Mr. Hall has his hand up and then we'll go to Councillor McLaughlin and then I'd like a motion.
Thank you. I guess just one thing to keep in mind, I guess with the rezoning, you know, they are proposing to change a number of different items. Now, even if the rezoning gets adopted, they still have to work through the subdivision application. There will be a development permit application. While the subdivision itself doesn't go back to council, the development permit application would. The associated development variance permit application for the lane width reduction would also go at the same time back to council. So there are still a few opportunities for council to look at this. And the rezoning, again, we're, in terms of providing I guess, the potential for a smaller lot, increased lot coverage, doesn't mean that they're going to be able to prove it all out to all the other bylaw standards. So we're setting a framework saying, at the zoning level, yeah, you can go down to potentially 265 square meters, you can have a lot coverage up to 70%, and setbacks down to 1.5 meters. But once they work through the subdivision and development permit applications, they may find that it's not workable to get every piece out of that. Maybe they can only do 7 lots, or maybe they can only do, 4 units on some of the lots and not all of them that they want to do. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, the piece around the lot coverage, that there's drainage, on-site requirements that they have to manage, through subdivision and development control bylaw 430, and with an increased lot coverage, that becomes very challenging and very expensive. And they may find it's not worth it to try to do that. But I think for now, at the rezoning level, conceptually and with their preliminary servicing, they're trying to create the conditions where they can still make 8 lots work. And they've already made the one modification where the 2 corner lots, they can't fit a 4-plex on the 2 corner lots, so they've already adapted that piece. So I think just in terms of the overall process, the rezoning sets the stage for them, trying to take advantage of each of these individual pieces, but through the subdivision and development permit, there's still a lot of work to be done to prove out, can they really make this work? And council will have an opportunity to kind of weigh in future on some of these aspects.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, Councillor McLaughlin?
Yes, through the chair. I am concerned that, this proposal goes beyond what the province has recommended for FAR, for site coverage, for lots of things, because I think we've sort of not realized that when they do the building code and design the parameters for the code, the idea is to protect people from fire, which is why houses are not to be too close together, which is why they're not to be too close to the road, and which is why openings are clearly specified in terms of limiting the openings in terms of fire. And I'm not sure any kind of review has gone forward on that, considering the density and the compactness that we're pushing into this type of development. It is a concern to me. I think there's reasons maybe why the province has said, like, these are the limits. They're, so don't go beyond them, because I think it could be hazardous. And also, I noticed during the other applications on this project that other things were brought forward. I don't know if they're still covered with the approach you're taking, but water conservation was something they promised. I don't see anything here about that. I don't see any environmental or amenity contribution. I don't see anything on that. Is that off the table? What happened to these goals that we had?
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess the previous rezoning did secure the amenity contribution payment through the covenant that's still on title. So at the time of building permits, they would still have to pay the community amenity charge that was previously agreed to and is in the covenant. So that applies regardless of this rezoning. And yeah, in terms of the water conservation stuff, I mean, again, all those commitments still kind of stand through when they bring back the development permit application. Obviously, landscaping is part of that. Given the limitations on site coverage, the landscape plan will be substantially different than if they were larger lots, but all that still kind of carries over.
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd. and
I'm
then skip to the
actually going to,
motion.
through the chair, propose an amended recommendation that the zoning amendment bylaw 580/18/2025 be read a first time and strike the other text.
Okay, so that's a motion. Is there a seconder? Okay. Do that one. That doesn't prevent a second if people want to move that motion, but for now we can do it that way.
And sorry, I think I'm falling sort of along with several of the councilors here, a little bit uncomfortable with the density, but I'm willing to sort of keep the application going through. I do prefer it from the first time it went through where there were single houses. So I think we're moving in the right way. It's just that there's such density proposed here. I'm feeling uncomfortable with it, but I'd like to see it move to the next step. Thanks.
Right. Yes, Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, okay, great. So we, first and a second are on that one, and hopefully it stays at one for now. Somebody asked a little earlier, I think it was Councillor McLaughlin, about the earlier amenity contribution commitment based on the density at that point. If we're in a sense, and there seems to be a very narrow majority of council members that are prepared to see higher density, will the amenity contribution then go up?
The previous R6 rezoning contemplated the same level of density, so the number of units that was at the time of that application, a little bit after they had submitted all the small scale multi-unit housing requirements kind of came out, and that's where we, through that rezoning, proposed incorporating the 4-unit and similar requirements into that new zone that would apply to this property. That was sort of a precursor to us doing the larger SHMU zoning update to the whole bylaw. So the amenity contribution from that rezoning was already based on the idea that there could be 4 units through the zone allowed at that time. So that's all captured in the covenant in terms of the per unit charge. So yeah, there's been no increase in density, no change in the number of lots, but the covenant is still in effect. So whenever they came in for a building permit, if they built 4 units on each property, that's already covered by the covenant.
Right. So the covenant, the community amenities won't change.
No.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion for first reading. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor McLaughlin opposed. The motion carries. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Just through you to staff, I guess the question I have, what next? Recognizing we're sort of only comfortable with first reading tonight, identifying in here that it is OCP compliant and therefore a public hearing is not allowed for this project. There still needs to be the advertising and the ability to receive feedback. Has that period run its course? Like, is this just gonna come to the next council meeting for second reading, I guess is my question. Thank you.
That's right. I mean, without a public hearing, we can receive input anytime.
Yes, that's correct. The normal kind of prohibition on new information or comments after a public hearing no longer apply because there is no public hearing. So there's no termination to receiving input.
I'm gonna take a different, I'm gonna check the temperature in the room perhaps to see, I would like to proceed with second reading. I think we've heard from Mr. Hall that there's many other times we get a chance to look at this and the checks and balances. I am swayed very strongly with the Habitat letter and the fact that Cover the Coast is under, reading the letter, under contract. And folks, we gotta, yes, we've approved a lot, but things aren't getting built. I don't think we should be taking more time at this time because a lot of it is conjecture. What we're talking about is speculative. So I would far prefer to see us approve all of this, recognizing that we've got some opportunities to fine tune, the number of washrooms or other things, rather than trying to do it at this stage. So with that, I'm going to make a motion that we give second reading tonight. Sorry, I'm going to, a motion that we give second and third reading tonight. So that would leave adoption for a future meeting. Oh, is that a second, Counselor Rowe? Thank you. Okay. Okay, so any discussion on that? Not, I'll call the question. All in favor of second and third reading? 3 opposed. The motion is defeated. Okay. Very good. So I don't think there's anything left for this. Oh, I got to read the bylaw, of course, but, I remembered. Yes.
If I could maybe
Please.
seek some guidance from council on what they would like to see from staff or the applicant in terms of us bringing it back
Yes.
for second and third reading and ultimately adoption. Are there particular changes? For example, if council is generally okay with the minimum lot size, but it's the lot coverage increase is too much, do you have, would 60% be more acceptable than 70% in terms of providing a little bit more specific direction to us and the applicants ultimately on what would be supportable?
Thank you. Yeah. Counselor Shepherd?
Yeah, that's a good question to ask council to deliver on. And I guess I'd, for my own part, preferred to try and stay the provincial guideline, which is 50% coverage, instead of 70%, which I think this, have I got that correct?
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, the what's referred to in the community association letter, I mean, the province had a policy manual, I mean, they still have it, but ultimately, that was to inform our initial bylaw amendment to comply with, the previous June deadline to update our bylaws to allow the 4 units and providing some guidance for that. So I guess from the staff perspective, we don't see that policy manual and the provisions in there as applying to every rezoning that comes forward now and in the future. So the 280 square meters, that was at the time when you're updating your bylaw, these new regulations apply to properties that are that size or larger. It doesn't mean the province hasn't established a minimum lot size that says you must allow this minimum lot size. It's just, that was the recommendation at the time of updating your bylaw. Same thing with the guidance around lot coverage, et cetera. So when we're dealing with a rezoning like this, and any rezonings moving forward, that policy manual, I mean, it could be used as a guide, but it's not really anything that we'd have to adhere to. So if we're saying, in this case, we're willing to support a higher lot coverage, that's okay. The province isn't going to weigh in on that. It's more,
Okay.
that was more to inform updating our bylaws in the first place.
So the province is in guidelines as opposed to prescriptive,
Yeah.
thou
Yeah.
shalt not exceed our numbers.
Yeah,
That-
ultimately.
Yeah. Counselor Toth.
Thank you. And, we're taking a large part of the parent parcel as a laneway, which is on us. If we were talking about reciprocal easements across the whole string of properties, 50% is probably where it would land. So part of this problem is our own making. I know for me personally, like, I see the letter from Habitat for Humanity. I hear what Councillor Rowe is saying. For sure, I could see my kid someday moving into a unit like this, perhaps if it means they can stay here. I just need a little bit of time to chew on it. I'm not proposing any changes. I need a little bit of time to chew on it, specifically because we haven't heard from the neighborhood. We've heard from the community association, but not the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think that helps, that implicit is you're not looking for more from staff except perhaps some arithmetic, like based on if the road was part of it.
I don't even need staff to do that work. The information's all there for me to divide two numbers together myself. It's funny because when we talk about massing and density, like the massing of these units are they're less than the first thing we dealt with tonight, right? Like they fall well within our height limits and things like that. Like they're actually a smaller structure than that first house we talked about tonight. So I literally just need some time to think about it and maybe hear from the neighborhood.
And how would that look? I'm trying to help, answer Mr. Hall's question. We want staff to talk to neighbors. Do you and I want to go and meet the neighbors?
Well, as it happens from the parcel next door down the road, I've already spoken to a number of the neighbors, and I know that one of them is particularly keenly interested in knowing what's going on in his neighborhood. And he's quite engaged. And admittedly, I didn't read my agenda until a couple days ago, so I could have perhaps had time to send this to him
but that's okay.
directly.
So you already got one person
So
you can
I've got
talk
at least
to.
one contact, like, I just want to feel it out with the neighborhood
So I'm
myself.
I'm asking because can we ask staff to bring it back in 2 weeks? Next council meeting? Does that give you enough time? You know, it's
chew
on
on
you
it?
for a moment. Yeah, you got 2 microphones on, Counselor Bell and.
Yeah, I would like to, I think we need to put a timeline on this. How long do you need to chew on it? You know, what other information, in fairness to the staff and also to the people the developer and so on. So we don't want it just to sit there. Let's put a timeline on this.
Mhm.
2 weeks? Good? We need to, next council
Yeah,
meeting?
It is in 2 weeks. You had your microphone on, so.
Yeah, I mean, we could ask, by this meeting, planning don't have to do anything. The West Sechelt Community Association could canvass, see what the local neighbors, if they want to, come back with some more feedback, that I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. I feel badly that we're not giving more direction to staff in terms of what our preferred lot sizes are. If we're not going to accept this, what would we prefer to see? But let's have this come back in 2 weeks and hopefully we'll get more public feedback, maybe more time to think about what we do want. Thanks.
I would be uncomfortable answering the question of, do I like 50 or 60 or 70, because I'm not the expert. So that's a practical thing that you can give me new numbers, but for me to tell you what do I think is the right number is beyond my pay grade, my expertise. So, yep, okay, Councillor Inkster.
So we're requiring within 2 weeks, West Sechelt Association get out and canvass. How do they make that decision to get out there and canvass through
No.
their system?
No.
It's just not clear to me. I just have another couple of questions and council can maybe answer that after that. So we also have to come back in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll go to second and third then if it comes back, because that's some clarity for me. And we're in a hurry because this particular proposal has not sat on our books for a year. And are we also in a hurry because they're really planning to go into the ground within the next 2 months to build these needed buildings to keep up with the other approvals of buildings that we've given waiting for housing to happen? Thanks.
I'll take a run at that. I'm in a hurry because this is an early part of the process. So even if we had given 3 readings tonight, I think I'm right. There's no way shovels would be in the ground in 2 or 3 months. So, you know, this is part of the dilemma because time is money and it takes, the longer this process takes, it adds to the cost. And my focus is on making things affordable. And all we can do to make things affordable is speed up our process.
But I'm not willing to run roughshod over the community
no,
association
no.
or the neighborhood to do it. Which I know, based on Councillor Shepherd's comments, kind of runs counter to the first proposal we talked about tonight, but I think, yeah, I mean, 2 weeks is not gonna, 2 weeks shouldn't make or break this project, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, no, 2
We
weeks.
couldn't adopt it tonight anyways, even if
Yes.
we plowed ahead.
Right.
so.
Okay, Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, I also don't like Councillor Inkster's comments that we're requiring the West Sechelt Community Association to do something. That's not what I said. I said, I think they want to help in the process. They want to be involved. Maybe that's one outlet to get this public feedback or more extended public feedback. So no one's requiring them to do anything. We're just looking for, as Councillor Toss said, a little bit more of the residents' input on this. Thanks.
And how would you do that? I mean,
By this meeting, this is what I've said, by the very fact that we've held this meeting, we've got a letter from the West Sea Schelt Community Association. They've expressed interest in it. I'm happy to give them a call after this and say, look, we're looking for a few more residents to provide opinion on it. It's not we don't have to press our staff into an exercise. And the 2 weeks, I'm fine with the 2 weeks.
okay, great. So you got a friend, you're going to talk to West Sea Schelt Community Association, and it'll be on the agenda in 2 weeks so far.
I
Councillor
mean,
Engstrom.
obviously, I'm not saying we should require anybody to do anything. It's a free country. They'll just tell us to pound sand. What I'm saying is, obviously what I'm saying is, can they get out there and get the information from the people that we're asking for in 2 weeks? That's simply what I'm saying.
Okay.
We can't make
All
them
right,
do
thank you.
anything.
Let's,
Call the question, please.
yeah. Well,
I just wanted to comment, like Coast Reporter picks up what we do at these council meetings. There will be a story about it tomorrow, right? And that
yeah, online, yes.
online, and that might be enough. They hear us, people online hear us, like we don't entirely operate in a vacuum here.
You've noticed. Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, through the chair. I'm just wondering if the Advisory Planning Commission has had a chance to review this. And that's sort of why we have them. They might have some ideas there. We have a new bunch of
Mr. Hall?
people too.
They reviewed the previous rezoning, but not this particular proposal.
They haven't, and they won't be meeting for at least another month, right?
No.
Okay, so I suppose we should have a motion to bring this back for second and third reading at the next council meeting. Second, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor McLaughlin and Inkster are opposed. Motion carries. Okay, so then we have to read the bylaw, which is on page 80 of our agenda package. This is being read for first time. So motion to give first reading to bylaw 580-18, 2025. Councillor Shepherd, Councillor Bell. Discussion, all in favor of first reading? Opposed? Councillor McLaughlin is opposed. The motion carries. Okay, thank you, folks. We can go to the minutes of our meetings, February 5th, council, starting on page 82. Comments or concerns? Please.
Thanks. It'll come up as a business arising, of course, the bottom of page 90, with the motion that I had attempted to make, which was referred to the next council meeting, which is this council
one.
meeting. But since I've got the mic, just a minor clerical error actually in that recommendation. So just before we adopt them,
Go ahead.
just it's that staff provide an update to a future
Yes.
committee of the whole meeting. That's only because I've already talking about it. So thank you.
Okay, and I agree. Councillor Toth can see it's highlighted on my screen. So I think we could take that as referred is spelled wrong too. There you go. That's what we're here for. So how about we take it as referred to the next from today, next council meeting? I know. Okay, that's matters arising. So, okay. All right, so motion to adopt as amended with those big, all in favor, carried. Then we go to page 92 in the meeting of February 12th. Anything, folks? Nope. All in, motion, second, all in favor? Carried. All right, matters arising, Counselor Toth, how would you like to deal with that one?
I think procedurally, does it need a motion to put it back on the floor because it was referred to this council meeting?
I believe that the statement that needs to be made is that it is picked up from the floor. Or-
Yeah, with-
Sorry, I don't have the exact wording, but no, a formal motion isn't needed to bring it back onto the floor. But we had laid it on the table, now we're picking it up from the table.
Okay, so nothing formally required to bring it back. Yeah, I mean,
We want it to come back.
well, what I heard is we don't need to do anything. Yeah, like you as chair
Yeah.
can just say this is back for discussion.
I know,
We
and
don't need a
so,
motion to that effect.
Right.
I still support the concept. I know we had a discussion about whether there was a timeliness to it or whether we wanted to wait for the 30 days to come up. You know, ironically, the referral to this council meeting is not 30 days later from when we originally had the discussion. I'm still supportive of the original motion as I made it. Thank you.
okay, and I think it's interesting, there was, forget which municipality did an analysis and identified that while they were worried about tariffs, they actually didn't source anything from the US. So that became a fairly easy analysis for their staff presumably. So I would certainly be in favor of it coming back in a month, like not the next, but the meeting after. So we'll get a little more clarity on whether tariffs are coming. So, so we're on page 90, right at the bottom. So whether we want, future committee of the whole meeting. Right. Yeah. Okay, so how about it comes to the next committee of the whole after next week, not next week. So that's probably 3 weeks from now. Yes, I am.
Thank you. I'm also cognizant of, you know, timeliness and other things that staff have going on. Like, I don't need them to drop everything to write this report or give us this update. You know, we talked about it at the last meeting. We're just sort of looking at a high-level overview. If we pass this, I have confidence in staff to bring it forward when they have an answer for us. I don't feel the need to pin a timeline to it. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, yes, all right, so we'll take it that way. Yes. So it'll come back soon, please, but when you have the opportunity, looking at staff. Okay, we'll just, yes, so what's your motion?
That staff provide an update to a future committee of the whole meeting on the potential impact that tariffs may have on capital and operational costs.
Second? Yes. Okay, so. Okay, procedurally, we could go on and talk all night. All in favor? Carried. Sorry. All right, very good. So we can then go to page 2 of our agenda, which is 9.1, which is SCRD report. Left and right sides.
I guess I'll take a first crack at it. I don't have a lot of notes from the last couple weeks. SCRD adopted the budget, the financial plan bylaws. So the final number for the district of Sechelt ends up being $7.35 per 100,000 of assessed value. So $73 for $1 million home. attended a community engagement this afternoon down at Church Road at the pump house. It's phenomenal. That project is still not technically closed and finished. But there's a lot of angst in the community about the chemical storage structure that's on the site and where it is and what's going to be sufficient to screen it and sort of put the neighborhood at ease about it being there. Yeah, as I mentioned before the meeting started, I don't think there could have been any more rain or any more wind without it actually having been categorized as a storm. And Director Stanford reminded me that by the very end of the session, when we literally had our backs turned, our tent blew away. So yeah, it was a crazy time to be out there. But there was 6 or 7 neighbors that came out to share their concerns and to talk about the issue. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to speak to people one-on-one, because, you know, you do emails, you do letters, it all sort of gets lost. Yeah. And then I think the only other thing I wanted to mention was that the board is hoping to finish our part of the corporate prioritization work with senior management team tomorrow afternoon. Now that we've adopted the budget, we know sort of what plans we want, you know, what projects we want staff to move forward with in 2025. And so it'll be about where those plans and those projects fall within the priorities for the next year. So that's really all I have to report.
Anything to add, Councillor
Yeah, thanks.
Rinker? Something new?
Yeah, well, I mean, the budget item that Toth spoke to, I think this council's aware that a number of other areas are having much larger increases this go round. I think we talked about that, and I think the figures have been available to this council. The only other thing I wanted to mention as well then is we had a presentation on bylaw at lunch last week. It was interesting, and I wonder if we could, if council wants to see it, send that report to this council to see what bylaw does, and just I don't know if we ask for a PDF version for ourselves, and we could forward it to council if they want to see it. It just gives you a picture of what bylaw deals with, sort of similar to our own bylaw enforcement department, except that they're in a larger geographical area, although Seashelt isn't small. So council wants that, I think we should send it to them. It's interesting about the work they do and how they investigate, and how we all know it's more about compliance than fines and the collection of said fines. It's very low probability that you get a return on that kind of investment. It's all about compliance. So that was my report. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Maybe we'll start with Councillor Shepherd, and we'll go around the virtual world.
No
Councillor
report.
Bell, Councillor Rowe.
No report. I was away.
That's why.
You were away for a while.
Yeah. Councillor Bell.
Good to do all your stuff
Did-
too.
Yes, just to report that we had a Seashell Community Safety Committee meeting on February the 12th. And I just want everyone to know that's here and listening in that there's some great work being done in terms of some initiatives. Certainly from what we've heard from our forums and what we're hearing from ongoing survey. So we've also, of course, discussed this in our budget process. So we have put some numbers to the money that we'll be spending in community safety. And we'll be sharing that more with the community in terms of some of the initiatives that will be coming up, because we are going to, one of our priorities is to increase our communication in terms of what we're doing and what we're hearing, those kind of things. So rather than, I'll just sort of give a high level. Just one thing we do have booked is April the 12th. Yeah, April the 12th. Which is the Seashell Activity Center, which is the Rotary Volunteer Fair. And so we have booked that for, to be a part of that, the Community Safety Committee meeting, as well as the RCMP and the Committee on Patrol. So we're all going to have a table together, and it'll be a great opportunity to be able to tell the community what we're doing, to hear more from the community in terms of questions they have, concerns, etc., And it really will be sort of our first time back at being together as a group again and engaging. So, mark your calendars. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Counselor Rowe, you're in. You're up, you're on, you're muted.
I was just checking my calendar because I think we're at AVICC on the 12th, Counselor Bell, just so you know. Anyways,
April.
April.
April 12th is the volunteer fair, is what I said.
Yeah, we're at AVICC on April 12th, just so you know.
What?
Unless you're not going. Anyways, we're having a conversation.
Oh, no.
This
I'm
is
gonna have
part
to
of my
speak to my
report.
secretary. Oh, okay, thank you.
Part of my
No
report,
problem.
I've been Counselor Bell's secretary. Before the community safety meeting, we did, a few of us counselors met with some representatives from BC Housing, and they came to town, wanted to learn a little bit about the lay of the land in Sechelt and the challenges that we're having. So that was a good lunch meeting. And I've been sitting on, although I have to say I missed the last meeting, but I thought I'd share it with you guys, is a new sort of a health advisory council with regards to trying to recruit and retain more physicians for the Sunshine Coast. So it's a group of all sorts of community members. I'm sitting on it with the political hat, not the healthcare hat, and it's something that Dr. Lehman and the Division of Family Practice has started. And there's some really innovative things going on in this realm in other parts of the province where nonprofits are basically opening up clinic space and dealing with all the overhead, which the physicians don't. They've been wanting sort of out of that game. The landscape has changed. So that's been an interesting journey so far, and they've elected a chair for the group, which is Darnelda Seegers. So the meetings are going to keep happening. Let's just put it that way. So we hope that we can make some headway there. And I know that through the primary care network, there are a few more doctors coming over the next few months as well. So hopefully the number of attached clients will be lessened. I do want to say though, if you are unattached, you need to register at the health registry. And because that's where where these new physicians will be taking clients or new patients from. So if you know anyone who doesn't have a doctor, just Google health registry and put your name on the list. There is somebody managing it locally for the Sunshine Coast. And that's it for today. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Not too much to report. Still happy to have the snow melted. But during the storm and the ongoing grading of roads and snow piling up, I did talk to a lot of people in the community who, were quite distressed when paths were not cleared for them, especially if they had wheelchairs and such, because it went on for so long. It really got critical that people could get outside and walk around and get to key places, right? And so I'm thinking it might be worth identifying certain routes that almost for emergency preparedness, but routes that are priority that really have to be fully cleared for people to get around. Because if you can't get around the village, where can you get around? And it was quite disturbing to see, for instance, on Trail, the sidewalk was not shoveled. We put so much money into that expensive streetscape, and yet, it was not usable. So I think it'd be worth looking at the fines for certain routes and to encourage, you know, I guess, I mean, you can only help so much, but like when the grading happened, even routes that were clear were not clear again. So I don't know the answer, but you can't just rely on neighbors. You can't just rely on people in wheelchairs to get up and get a shovel to be able to get to a chair, a seat to sit on a sunny day when there's that much snow, et cetera. So it just was kind of a wake-up call in terms of emergency preparedness for the neighborhood and trying to make it accessible even during, you know, winter storms like this. So that really, I got a lot of comments on that. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Toth?
Thank you. I guess the only thing I want to add to what's already been reported out on is that I want to say thank you to our staff for the work that they did around the clock with keeping the snow cleared and the routes as accessible as they could, given the circumstances. I know that our manager of Public Works mentioned, I was at a Director Lee and I and the manager of Public Works were at a little interface with some residents from Sandy Hook about some of these issues around slippery roads and snow clearing and things like that. And the manager was making reference to, you know, they had like a 2-hour gap in service overnight. And between when trucks came in and when the next shift went out, it looked like they hadn't plowed at all because it was coming down so heavy for a portion of it. And so I think in light of that, I know that Councillor Bell was stuck for a while out there in Tawanek and some of our residents, but the great north of Tawanek, yeah. But they did an absolutely tremendous job given the circumstances, and I think I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you.
You're reading my notes. But yes, just a big thank you to everybody. We don't see them working, but they worked hard and it hasn't stopped. Now we got to make sure the ditches are clear from the wind today. There's some more branches down and stuff, so people can play their role to keep things cleared. I attended, we had 2 public sessions to kick off our OCP process, starting with the CLDA, Community Land Development Analysis, last week. And we had meetings very well attended. The afternoon, the evening was good, but the afternoon was great. We filled the Seaside Center. I had a meeting yesterday. A citizen reached out to me about flags that have been flown on Davis Bay Pier. And I met with this individual who was very accommodating in the sense that he said, look, I don't have any problem with people speaking out about what they believe and in fact, he wants to have discussions with people like that to understand their perspectives and in the hope they'll understand his. So I was very, I guess I found it a very affirming conversation because it was not, you're wrong and I'm right. It was nothing like that. But he did flag, unintended, I suppose, that some people are putting flags and banners and stuff on the pier, and that is not permitted. So I would ask everybody to, you know, by all means, freedom of speech and right to speak up, but please not on the pier. And finally, sad note, in Len Pakalak, for many of you who may know Len, passed away in December. I attended his celebration of life today. I just wanted to say Len was the first chair of the Sunshine Coast Community Forest. He and his late wife Lynn were driving forces behind the Writers' Festival from the very beginning. And an ardent golfer at Blue Ocean Golf and an excellent winemaker.
Nice man.
And yeah, and he was my friend. So rest in peace, Lynn. Yes, Councilor.
So you forgot about me in my report, so you forgot about me in my report, yeah.
Yes, I went in the circle.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say, but, yeah. Like a lot of people in our community that were very active over the event, we know them, those that have been active in government for a number of years now. People just get old from them. They're not around anymore, but they're huge contributors to our community. Yeah, I just want to mention a couple of things. The number of us went to a tax presentation last week. So they're really good group. I think their discussion at that point was more of a portion of highway and which there's been some problems in Gibson Berry. And we'll see how they proceed with that and how they get funding and cooperation from the region district on that piece. I think that the District of Sechelt should keep really close to that group because they seem to be very active. They're driving force behind not only looking for funding, but also alternative transportation plans for the Sunshine Coast all the way up, keep people off that highway that seems to be full, even just last week with the snow going away. So it's a good group, and there's a number of us there. And I just wanted to mention the amalgamation presentation that a number of us went to and then the theater presentation and the movie presentation at the Raven's Cry of the amalgamation of the four clans of the Sechelt peoples. And I was, I think I'm trying, Sonai, Tawanek, Hanishin, and then I think Sexe is the one around us. So that's the four clans of the Sechelt, and they all came together. Sure. Oh, okay. Were you online? So it's Hanishin, I think Saxe, Sonai, and Tawanek were their four clans, and they amalgamated through their decision into Sechelt a number of years ago, into Sechelt area a number of years ago, because it was just better with the economic struggles they were dealing with. And I think that has to do with a lot of the diseases that sadly came with the Europeans. So they had to make a decision to amalgamate. So there was a good presentation, and the elders spoke to a number of the issues and the decision to amalgamate and the results in a really good movie that I'm sure once again is available to this council if requested. It was just good to be invited to that and be with the Sechelt Nation to share that moment with them a few days ago. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, then we go to item 10.1, which is correspondence from the community forest. And this is for our information. I think there's a particular action item unless you know of people who would like to provide input on or before April 1st into the forest stewardship plan, which is essentially the plan for the next 5 years. So it's an important document, not unlike an OCP. It guides the plan and a little more prescriptive than an OCP. So any discussion, we'll just take that as read and well, that's what they provided in the letter, an email address to send comments, and of course we can meet with community forest anytime.
Yeah.
So. Yep. Thank you. Yes. All right. That's fine. And Councillor Toth is the rep. Okay. Last thing is item 11.1 on page 96, which is just to release from closed meeting the appointment of 5 people. I want to thank Neil Mackey, Vicky Morris, Jason Packer, Angie Sita, and Jesse Stuparik for stepping up to join the APC. So the next meeting will be very much an orientation one and get to know each other. And that's why earlier I said unlikely we'll have a APC in the next week or two of substance, I mean. So motion to release and seconded. All in favor of release? Carried. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. and seconded, and all in favor, we are adjourned. Questions? So, Pam?
It's about the properties that are being developed in, what's the road in West Sechelt? Mills Road. When somebody says, I live in a 400 or 900 square foot house and I'm enjoying it, it's fine. You don't have children. You also have a yard. It doesn't sound like these places have even a yard around them, and they're not